It doesn't take talent to be a great writer. So if it doesn't take talent, what does it take to be that great writer? It takes being able to organize your thoughts. It takes being able to create a scene in the reader's mind. It takes being able to use writers' techniques and devices such as alliteration, similes, ing phrases, and things like magic threes. Because these things are not talents. These are skills that every individual can learn to use. So let's look at an example of how to use some of those techniques to write a sentence like this one. Sledding down the hill, the wind whipping wildly through my hair, and the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed, our exhilarated screams of laughter filled the air. First of all, in the very first part of this sentence, we used a technique in order to create this imagery, to create this scene. I specifically, as a writer, began to think of what are some things that I can say about what's going on as we're sledding down the hill. So, number one, we are sledding down the hill, so I could say that. Number two, as we're going down the hill, the wind is whipping through my hair. And so I specifically chose to say the wind whipping wildly through my hair. And then, of course, as we're sledding down the hill, I'm seeing ahead of me that the bottom of the hill is actually getting there awfully fast. And so I said the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed. So let's talk about the specific techniques and devices that are needed in order to do that. First of all, I decided to find 3 things to say about sledding down the hill. I chose, number 1, sledding down the hill, 2, the wind whipping wildly through my hair, and 3, the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed. And so we call that a magic 3. That's Mary Ledbetter's term for this particular device. But that is what we're doing. We specifically try to think of 3 things to include. Once I chose these 3 things to describe, the trip down the hill, the wind, and how fast we were going, I had to decide how I wanted to put this into words as a writer. So specifically, I decided to use the technique of using ing phrases. With an ing phrase, I know that that ing is going to be attached to an action verb. When I attach it to an action verb, that means it's going to show the action that's taking place. And so that's going to make it more interesting to the reader. So I chose to say sledding down the hill, the wind whipping wildly through my hair, and the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed. So after I got through writing these 3 phrases, one of the things that I ended up with was the wind whipping through my hair. And so I started looking at that particular phrase and I said, well, that'd be kind of cool if I added some alliteration here. I've already got wind whipping. What if I added one more word that had that W and described something else that started with that sound? And so that's when, with a little bit of thinking, I came up with the word wildly. And so I turned that phrase from the wind whipping through my hair into the wind whipping wildly through my hair. So I also wanted to find something that would show the reader how fast we were moving down that slope. So I started thinking of things that were really, really fast, like race cars and race horses and other things that might be fast, like speeding trains or bullets, or I got to thinking, well, you know what, jet planes go really fast. And so I also thought, well, how do we describe that? We describe jet planes as going at subsonic speeds. And I really like that because of the S's in there as well, because when you go down the slope, you almost hear that swish, swish, swish sound as you're going down the slope. And I said, well, that'd be cool. I could do 2 things with one little technique here. I can use subsonic speed, and it'll also help me to create that alliteration with those S's. So I ended up with the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed. So I also chose the word exhilarated because I was trying to find something that would describe the feeling of how we felt as we went down the slope. And I wanted it to show that it was really fun, but I also wanted to show that it was exciting at the same time. And so I actually got out a thesaurus and I started looking at, okay, well, what's another word that would describe exciting? And one of those words was exhilarated. And so I thought that would be a great word to use because that really describes the feeling we have as we're going down the slope. So when I got through making all of those changes, this is what I ended up with. Sledding down the hill, the wind whipping wildly through my hair, and the bottom of the slope approaching at subsonic speed, our exhilarated screams of laughter filled the air. So the question I get all the time is it hard? Is it hard to learn these skills, to be a writer like that? Well, it's just like any other skill out there. The first time you try to dribble a basketball, the first time you try to swing the bat and hit the ball, the first time you try to learn to roller skate or ice skate or ride a bicycle, at first those things are hard. They're challenging and it takes thought. You really have to concentrate on what you're doing. But after you've been doing it a while, it is no longer impossible. After you've practiced it, then you can get where you can ride the bicycle without even thinking about it. You can ride the bicycle without any hands. You can really learn to beef up these skills. So how do I take charge and become that skilled writer? That means that you have to start looking at what other writers are doing and how they're doing it. How are they making that sentence like that? How are they creating that specific effect? How did they use that simile and that metaphor? And how did they create that imagery in my mind? What is it about that that I really like? Once I find those things that I really like that other writers are doing, I can do the same thing myself. I can emulate them. I can take the skills, the techniques, the devices they are using, and then I can do it the same way. And when I do it the same way, I have the same effect on my audience, and voila, all of a sudden, I'm a skilled writer. So step up to the challenge right now. Take that challenge, take charge, and become a skilled writer.